name's Michael Bosey. Welcome to episode 90 of my podcast called Marketing Without the Marketing, where I try to teach you everything I know about content marketing, sort of soft touch approaches to marketing in little 10-minute clips at a time. And took a short break last week after finishing up a series on repurposing content. Got away for a few days with my wife. It was good. Sometimes you got to do that. And I'm happy to be back today. And, just a little reflection before I jump into a couple new series that I've been planning. Looking back at the past year or so of doing this podcast, there are a few standout points. And, the thing I've been doing and just reflecting on this is just noticing that the episodes that are most successful tend to be the ones that are part of series. This is good to know, right? Like, you always want to be sort of assessing where you are, what's working, what's not, etc. And it seems like you, in my audience, prefer these series. So I just mentioned I finished a couple weeks ago this series on repurposing content. That was a 6-part series that got into using content and creating it from the beginning as a business asset, right? So in other words, it's not just going marketing campaign to marketing campaign, but instead it's having some sort of plan or strategy up front so that you know that you're going to use the content in more than one way. And of course, that makes you a lot more efficient. Spent 6 whole episodes on this, and I'll leave a link to the series in the show notes, or you can just find it in the feed. It is the most recent set. This series did really, really well, including I had an all-time high for downloads on one day, which is about 1,300 people who downloaded all in one day just a couple weeks ago during this series. And, look, for a podcast that is really narrowly focused, that's pretty good, or at least I think it's pretty good for me anyway. I'm not talking about things for general consumption. I mean, this is a pretty narrow topic, content marketing. It really has to be, or at least in the way that I'm using it, for small business owners or solo entrepreneurs or people who are trying to build a business and, are probably not part of a big company, but are just trying to, use the advantage that the internet gives with the power of the network, to sort of play bigger than you are. And that's how I run my own business. And you in my audience, that's how you run your business too. And so I'm sort of happy to go on this journey with you. But the fact is, when I look back, my best successes with this podcast seem to be when I'm in the middle of a series, not doing these sort of one-off episodes. And this is really valuable information. And I think the lesson to be taken from this is just, I look at all of this, whether you're podcasting, blogging, producing videos, whatever you do in your content strategy, it's teaching, right? And I've talked about this in other episodes. And here's the thing about teaching is that there's a structure to it. Or at least when it's done successfully, right, is that you pull things together, structure them so that they're in easily digestible pieces, and then the sequence of those pieces matters as well, right? And you, as an expert, you're able to do that because you can see the big picture. That's what an expert can do, right? But it's, of course, a big challenge to take your expertise and then try to teach that to a novice. It's a great exercise. Because when you try to teach something that you know very well to a novice, it really makes you clarify what's important about the topic and what's important to you making those determinations. And look, people value that, right? That's really important to someone who says, hey, can you teach me about, let's take this, repurposing content thing. How do you think about this? Can you show me that? Can you lay that out in a way that it makes the most sense? This is something you could learn. You could learn by doing. You could learn from, other YouTube videos, other podcasts, other blog posts. I mean, it's not like the things that I'm talking about are secret or not available out there. Everyone has has a take on this, people who are practitioners like me. But I'm going to think about it a little bit differently, right? I'm going to have a little bit of a flavor that's It's, maybe a little bit different than what's out there. And that's why you listen. That's why someone listens to you as well if you're doing a podcast, or someone reads your blog or watches your videos, right? Because you have a particular flavor or nuance to the way that you do things that's different than others. But that structure and sequence, I think, is really, really important. I've just been thinking about this a lot. And it's the way I prefer to work as well. For some reason, just this sort of structured way of thinking, the structured way of writing, I tend to prefer to write in these series. And that's what I'd like to do over the coming months. The two recent ones that I've done, I did the social media strategy series. So that was was a 16-part series, sort of brass tacks on each of the social platforms. What's going to be good for you and your small business? Help you make a determination in about 10 minutes or so. Is Twitter good for my business? Yes, no, make a decision. Is Facebook? Yes, no, make a decision. Facebook groups, Facebook ads, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. I went through this in a 16-part series. That one did very, very well. And then this repurposing content series. So I got a couple other concepts that I'd like to start on and, get into those. I haven't decided which one I'm going to start on. I guess I'll start writing and just and see where this takes me. But the two are, I've been getting a bunch of questions about just SEO, which is search engine optimization, or making yourself more searchable, more discoverable. So when people are typing things that they want to know into Google, you have a good chance of showing up. It's never a guarantee, but you want to up the chances. And the way that I look at this is, it's not a tech problem, it's a writing problem to solve. Because people are putting content into search engines, and you want to try to anticipate what it is that they want and try to answer that. And all that, to me, is how you present it, right? So in other words, it's the writing that you do to present the problem that they have in their own language. That's really important. And then match that to the solution that you offer. And yeah, look, there is a tech element to it as well. You need to know where everything goes on the page, in the back end, in the HTML code, where you put each thing in WordPress, if that's what you're using. I mean, all that stuff's important too, but to me, it's more of a writing problem. So, seeking the help of someone like me to help with writing, that often makes sense for clients, and I've been getting a bunch more referrals and a bunch more questions about that. So I thought I would try to lay that out, or at least the basics of that, so that I could give you a little bit of help on that too. But then the other big thing that I've been thinking about a lot is just, I'm a few years into running my own business, and I learned a lot from some folks along the way, people who are still mentors to me, particularly when I was at couple of startups after my long publishing career. And it's just, to me, I always had this sense that, that business didn't have to be business in the way that we think of it, right? So I thought, the idea of running a 21st century business was very, very different. So the basic premise here is that business doesn't have to be this sort of cutthroat zero-sum game that we think of it as, so, and you get this sort of language around this at big companies, and even startups have sort of appropriated this. It's often violent and overly masculine. The we're crushing it, or we're killing it, or that language, which just, it kind of drives me crazy, because you're not going into battle. Business is about serving. We're in it to serve other people, any of us, no matter what you do. If you're not serving someone, you're not in business. I mean, it's really that simple. And here's the thing. I believe that this has changed a lot, driven by the internet and the fact that we as consumers are a lot more connected, or at least we have the ability to connect and research and all this. And I've, of course, talked about this on this podcast, but consumers are different now. Their behavior is different. And my belief is that to meet them where they are, is that a soft touch approach is way more in line with today's consumers. To me, it treats them with respect. It acknowledges that they have, many more ways to find out about you and what you do and get to know you. And often that happens before you even have the chance to tell your story or defend it, right? So trust is huge. And, this has always been true, but today more so than ever, we buy from those whom we trust, right? So those sort of pushy, aggressive sales and marketing tactics that we know of from business and advertising and marketing, they don't work anymore. And that's why I call this podcast Marketing Without the Marketing, right? It's this soft touch approach. And I just feel like, promoting organic growth, building little by little, earning the trust of an audience. That's, yes, it takes a lot longer. Organic growth always does, but to me, it's worth it. And the thing is, when a customer arrives at a buying decision on his or her own, right, that bond is a lot stronger. And look, Psychology 101 tells us that, right? So you know this because you listen to this podcast. You're a small business owner. You know that you can't just sort of hammer people with advertising. It doesn't feel right for you as a small business owner, but also, look, people like you and me, we don't have the cash to try to buy awareness. So we'll go with organic growth. And yes, it's slower, but you got the opportunity to create much more meaningful relationships and nurture those customers. And in turn, if you're doing it right, and that's the whole point of this podcast, right, is that they will deliver a lot more lifetime value to you and your business in return. So I've mapped out sort of a bunch of different segments, and I got about, about another 15 or 16 segments, and talking about things like, for instance, how marketing is an investment, not a cost, how to, embrace long-term thinking and to get rid of the short-term thinking, my take on NDAs, which, I've written about this a little bit, but often the relationship starts there, and it's not a great way to start a relationship with a sign of mistrust. Marketing and the experimental mindset, not forcing people into dependency on your product, which sounds counterintuitive, but I want to jump into that. Talking about how I handle my own clients, where contracts, while they're important for outlining a business relationship, they should not be a trap. I want to write about that a little bit. So a bunch of things, and you sort of get the common theme throughout this, is just that, in running what I call a 21st century business, the rules are a little different. And I think that they, in a sense, we can all be nice to one another and still do business with one another and make one another successful. And that's about it. So anyway, I'd like to jump into those things in the coming weeks. And, I love hearing from you guys, you in my audience. Let me hear what you think. If you've got some things that you'd like for me to talk about as a part of either of these two series on the running a 21st century business or the SEO series, great. Or if you have another series idea or something that you'd like for me to talk about in my own experiences running a small business and serving clients and building online courses and running this podcast and all that. I'd be happy to share my experiences with you, which I probably don't even have to tell you. So, all right, anyway, thank you for listening. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.